Yeah, and it's amazing how personal it can get.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eduardo, and this is Agility Talks. And today I have with me Jeff Gothelf. He comes from the UI UX field and has written a lot of books in this field, having sold more than 10,000 audiobooks copy just of that. And more recently, he launched Forever Employable, his pretty new book that has sold only this month 2,000 copies alone. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Eduardo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So as you know, I actually developed a framework called A.L.M.A to assess agility with the teams. And this has 4 agile values. That is accountability, learning, motivation, and autonomy. And they come from the observation that I had working with a lot of teams throughout the work and a lot of different projects, that the issues that they were having sometimes for unlocking their potential was not related to the framework they're using itself, but lack on working in what I call here these key agile values. So I actually, using the term agile limbo, that is actually this place where you're using a prescribed framework, iteration after iteration, things do not prove, you see a lot of motivation and a lot of engagements. And this comes from the S curve, right? It's not something new, but I called like this moment the agile limbo. And I think that in our personal lives, we could relate these values to on unlocking the potential of yourself itself. And I know that Forever Employable talks a lot about it. So for A.L.M.A, the first value, accountability, has a key question that is, do you know what you're accountable for? And in A.L.M.A, it describes who perceive it as accountable. But I think that in our personal lives, you need to have accountability, right, for being successful and actually delivering a brand.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think initially and most importantly, you're accountable to yourself when it comes to your career, your professional and personal growth and development. And you owe it to yourself, really, to embody that accountability. And obviously, if you support other people, whether it's family or parents or there's accountability to them as well. And there's a real risk, I think, for folks to become well, not unemployable, but finding it increasingly more difficult to stay employed. And so I think that by thinking through some of the values within Forever Employable, which reflect many of the Agile values, in fact, um, you are building accountability to yourself so that you maintain your employability and that you're always improving, you're always getting better, you're always creating a situation where there's new opportunities coming towards you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you actually talking about like the interactions that you have around you, because accountability in the A.L.M.A framework is really like uh, how you make people feel accountable throughout the whole chain. And I believe that in our personal lives, it's something like that. So you mentioned there like being accountable to yourself and then to your family if you're supporting people. And then I believe that throughout your whole network, you need to be building that trust, right? Because for sharing accountability, you need to build trust too, right?
I mean, look, the accountability that you generate when you work is trust from the people that work with
Exactly.
you, whether they work for you or with you or whether they manage you. And so as to become a good in-house employee, right, you need to be accountable to your work. But I think more broadly than that, I think creating trust beyond within the organization and beyond the organization so that others see you as a leader, go to you when they need help, ask you for things, or try to hire you to come help them is tremendously valuable as well. Is to actively build that trust within and outside of the organization that you work in.
Yeah, that's great. I believe that too. And I believe this is kind of key for building your brand, right?
It's absolutely imperative, right? The people who we know the thought leaders in our communities, the people we respect, the people we see on stages giving talks or teaching classes or writing books. We trust those people. We trust them because they've given us reason to. They've shared generously. They've helped us out. They've helped the community out. They've helped the industry out. And they've built that trust over time so that when they put out material, we know that it's going to be good. We know we're going to learn something from them. We know it's going to be generous. And that's very, very important.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. I believe in that too. So the next value here in the A.L.M.A framework is learning. And the key question is, do you think you're safe to fail? So we're talking here about psychological safety, about learning, but more than that, like being able to learn from your mistakes, right? So it's not about just like formal training and things like that, but really engaging a learning culture within your organization. And I believe that this is true for our personal lives too, right?
Look, a lot of folks will tell you that it is not safe for them to fail in their career or in their employability, right? And so they'll say, well, if I lose my job, I'm in big trouble. The reality, though, is that in many ways, some of that is within your control, and a lot of it is outside of your control. And so the sooner that you can start to position yourself in ways that expand your viability in the marketplace, the sooner that you begin to share back and test whether or not you can build that trust and that accountability with people within your company, with people outside of your company, the sooner you get to you begin to figure out how to become forever employable and grow that personal brand. The reality is some of those ideas are going to fail. You're going to try some things. You're going to put some ideas out there. No one's going to read them. You're going to put some articles out there. People are going to hate them. But you learn from that. You learn from every one of those opportunities to see, okay, well, I tried this and it didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? And then you try again. And eventually you find the right combination of content, audience, and format and channel that really resonates and helps build your expertise as a thought leader in your discipline or in your space.
Yeah, trust me, I know about that. Like, as I shared with you my story last time that we talked a little bit about that. Like, uh, the crisis really gave me the opportunity to start writing and sharing, and it's exactly what you're describing here. So some things that you're sharing, like, are not going to be well received, but that's just the nature of that. So you need to use that in your favor to build that trust again, because you need to learn from your mistakes. You need to be able to say, okay, I can change opinion. I can change my opinion. I can learn from what other people are saying. And exactly that, like in the traditional organizations, people really say that are normally really afraid to fail because, I don't know, in our personal lives, they lost a job or they lost the opportunity, things like that. But as soon as you can learn from there, is how you actually become a tough leader, right?
Yeah, and look, it's interesting, right? Because this is not something that necessarily everybody's comfortable with. It's not necessarily something that people are good at,
Yeah,
right? This is something that you have to practice and learning, and if you're not failing, then you're not learning, right? I mean, failing sucks, right? Nobody wants to fail.
exactly.
But the reality is, look, I publish things on a weekly basis, articles, tweets, and things like that. Sometimes those things resonate, sometimes nobody reads them.
Exactly.
You know, and you try to figure out why. You try to understand why that didn't resonate or why people didn't read it. And it could be a million reasons why, but
As
you know,
soon as you can understand the reasons behind that and improve, that's the thing, right?
yes. Yeah. And you don't give up from that. You learn from it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. And it's really this way in the organizations. If you think about the organizations that really thrive in the crisis, they're all learning organizations, right? So they are organizations that keep learning from their mistakes and try to make different things because of that. As you just mentioned, like, we really cannot learn if we do not fail, right? And that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I believe that for personal life, it's just like that. One thing that I think is important to mention here, like, normally people underestimate or superestimate the power of trainings, right? And I believe this is also an interesting thing for us to discuss. Like, I believe, at least for me, you know, that I'm an agile leader. I really strive to be up to date in that space. And normally people just start like getting a lot of certifications. And today, the market is right now is like flooded with certifications from all kinds of institutes and things like that, because we know this is a market, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and people normally just start to say, saying, okay, I have a bunch of certification and thinks that this is enough for them to become employable or to actually show that they have expertise in the field. I think this is kind of a combination, right? You need to have training and need to be up to date with what is happening in the market. But the other side is really important too, right? You need to be able to learn from that and apply that and fail from that too, right? So it's a combination of experience and training, and not just training, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking at your CV and you have certifications for certain practices or methods, that's terrific. I'm glad that you have that. Now, talk to me a little bit about how you put them into action. How did you apply that
Exactly.
learning? What did you learn? How much of it was actually relevant to what you were doing? To me, that becomes a really interesting story, and it's a story that really reveals a lot of character as well, because inevitably you can't just take a wholesale process that you learned in a workshop or in a training seminar and just apply the whole thing to your
Exactly.
project. And so I'd love to hear, if I'm talking to you as a hiring manager, I'd love to know sort of what parts worked, what parts didn't work, why didn't they work, and what did you learn from that? To me, that really reveals a lot about whether you're a curious person, you're a humble person, and you're open to learning and progress.
Yeah, for sure. Like really the I believe that the idea here is like share, understanding how to share, right, your expertise. And this is really also not a simple thing, right? A lot of people I see really struggles in normally finding jobs, and they're really good candidates because I know them personally, but they really struggle in sharing their story. And I think learning is also about that, like understanding how you can share your story, right? And I believe Forever Employable has thousands of examples on that too.
Yes, I mean, look, the storytelling aspect is a key component of becoming forever employable. So you've got an expertise, you have experience, and you're going to get out there and you're going to share that expertise, that experience. And along the way, you're going to learn how to tell that story in a compelling way. That's absolutely important. And again, the first time, the second time, the third time you do that, it may not be a compelling way, but you learn and you get better and you exercise those muscles and they get stronger.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. So let's move to motivation. Motivation here in a broad concept for Alma is really how you actually cascade a vision or purpose in a more like modern way of your company down to your team. So it's really about the whys. And I believe like Forever is employable and really building your brand, like is really uh, key for that, right? You need to understand and we always need to remember why you're doing that.
It's really interesting. So I just started teaching the workshop for Forever Employable. It's called Becoming Forever Employable.
That's
And
great.
I have an interesting group of folks in the class, and they come from all walks of life. And why they're doing the class really does vary from person to person. So, for example, there's one individual in the class who's interested in becoming more influential at work. So they'd like to have more
Interesting.
clout and more impact on their team and on their bosses and their company's way of working. There's another person in the class who has been working professionally for a long time, for over 30 years, and has made several attempts to share their learning. There's 30 years of experience publicly and never had the kind of audience
I see.
that they were looking for. And so they're looking to kind of say, look, I've got 30 years of experience and I can help. Let me help. And
But
yet a
how
third
he
person in the
he can
course,
actually tell the story, right? And that's the difference, right?
exactly. And they've got that person's got great stories to tell. It's just a question of how to package them up in a way that people will listen. And then there's a third person who, again, is successful and has had a ton of experience, but can't articulate exactly what it is that they do in a consistent way so that they begin to attract the right kinds of clients for their consulting practice. And so motivation is absolutely key. It's understanding the why you even headed down this path, because that helps you then measure your success as well, right? Am I
Exactly.
achieving the thing that I set out to do?
Yeah, and if really you're passionate about what you do, your purpose, right? Because sometimes people try to say, okay, I'm good at something, and you can actually be good at something that you really do not like. People really thinks, and so sometimes people have jobs that they do not like, but finding a job that you like, and normally you are better in the things that you like. It's just a matter of finding your passion around it, and you'll be able to strive on that, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the folks that I work with these days about these types of things, some of them have multiple passions. And one of the things they're trying to figure out is, well, should I do just one, or can I do more than one? Because there's really at least two things that really motivate me. How do I balance those two things? And it's hard, especially these days, to really kind of take on both of those. One of the things I try to work with them on is focus, right? Let's get one thing. Let's focus on it.
Exactly.
Let's get it right. Let's nail that. And then we can scale from there,
We
right? Which
can
is good product philosophy as
figure that
well.
out. Yeah, makes sense. Like, and this works also for agility within the companies when you're actually going to prioritize things, right? It's kind of the same thing that drives you down, and you need to understand and start with that thing that is most important at the time, and you can work that throughout the end. But never forgetting why you're doing that thing, and start from there, right? It's all about
Mhm.
iteration. It's all about agility in these terms. That's great. That's great. And one thing that I think it's important to mention here is that for motivation in the ALMA framework is really important, like understanding how you can contribute. And I think in Forever Employable, this is also applicable, right? If let's take my example, like I'm passionate about agility and I always write things and I'm always in the community. So understanding how you can contribute to that community, I believe it's important too, right? Understand how you can do it.
There's nothing more rewarding, I think, than being generous to your community. And so the more that you can give back, the more that, if that's part of your motivation, that's even better, right? Is to say, look, I've got stuff to share and I want to give it back. And the more generously that you can give back to the community, I've found the more opportunities come back to you as well. So if your motivation is not only to create this new reality for yourself, but as part of that, to enrich the ecosystem, it turns out the ecosystem comes back and enriches you as well in the future.
Yeah, for sure. The power of good we will really believe in that too.
Mhm.
That's great. So this brings us to the last value for ALMA framework, and it's autonomy. In the ALMA framework, it's the key question is: do you think you have the necessary autonomy to do your job? And in the scale that you have, it describes who is trusted by the company to make decisions. So it's about decision making and empowering people and teams to make the right decisions. And making a mirror parallel here to Forever Employable, autonomy is also important in a sense that you want to build that autonomy from the ground up, right? You want to become forever employable. If you build that brand, work with that brand, and sometimes get to the autonomy, and not just like financial autonomy, but empowering the people around you that will eventually be working with you to grow to, right? So autonomy is also about that.
It's really interesting. I found that regardless of where people work, whether they work as a uh, self-employed consultant or they work inside an organization, uh, many people don't feel like they have autonomy to make decisions about their career or to make decisions about improving their employability. I hear things like, well, I don't want my boss to read this, or
Wow.
I don't want my, or I'm really worried about putting this out there because what are people going to say about me, or what are they going to think about me? And I think that's exactly the kind of stuff you need to put out there, because look, it comes down to doubt, right? When it comes to autonomy, it's interesting. When you work in house, you say, I need my boss to give me permission to do what I want to do. When you're building your career or your employability, it's about allowing yourself, it's basically letting yourself give yourself permission to do the things that you
Yes.
need to do to build your own platform and your own network and audience and this kind of career insurance that I talk about in the book. And a lot of folks won't allow themselves to do that. They fear retribution from their peers, from the community, from their bosses. They're worried about putting stuff out there that's not great or polished or finished. And I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, is getting people over that, showing them
Yes.
that nothing terrible is going to happen, and then slowly letting them build that confidence over time to where they are autonomous, right? Autonomous in either determining how their self-employed business is going to go,
Yep.
or autonomous in shaping their career, right? Which I think is very, very important and empowering for people as well, to feel like, well, I've got a hand in steering my career. I'm not just at the whim of my boss or my employer or the
No,
market.
exactly. Yeah. And that's not easy, right? Sometimes people feel trapped on that routine, right? And actually do not think about that. Interesting that you mentioned something, right? That people normally are afraid and think that they do not have this autonomy and are really afraid to put their ideas out there. One thing that really helped me, and I saw also a lot of colleagues telling me about that, right? Like mentoring uh, someone that you think you can improve. It's not just rewarding, but can help you improve these skills. Like, because for someone that you think you can mentor, you can put all your ideas out there and test them out, because you're not kind of afraid, right, of doing that. So you're sharing expertise with someone that will benefit from that. So you're just not empowered that people, but you can improve your skills on doing that, on put your ideas out there.
Absolutely. Look, step four in Forever Employable, which has a total of 5 steps that I went through that are in the book, is teaching, and really using teaching to give back, but also to learn how to tell a compelling story, to understand where there are gaps in your content, to gain confidence. And, if you can teach something, you become better at it yourself. And so teaching to me is one of the most important things. And look, and I see every opportunity as a teaching moment. For example, what we're doing right now, I see as a teaching moment. Standing up and
Sure.
giving a talk is a teaching moment. Teaching a workshop is obviously a teaching moment. Any opportunity that you have to mentor or coach is a teaching moment. And so take advantage of all those, because it builds up your confidence, it builds up your autonomy, and it makes you better at your job in the first place, which is a win-win situation.
Yeah, for everyone. And also, I believe that the moment that we are living right now is a perfect opportunity for that. I told you, like, my personal story is actually taking opportunity of the crisis to actually start building that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and right now at this moment, you have a much more access to people, right? People, you can reach them directly. You can ask them for a talk. You can ask them to a virtual coffee or something like that. So you can take advantage of this, like, virtualness that was already there before COVID, but COVID brought that up in your faces, saying, like, use this, you need to use that, right? You need to use that power of that networking in your favor. And I think it's important to, right, take advantage that now people are much more approachable than before, for learning, for building, for sharing, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
about that. It's about using the power of networking. People, and it's interesting too, like, you might mention that in Forever Employable too, but the power of networking and understanding how to network. Like, people tend to think that networking is just like, okay, I have a social media account and I just ask you to be added or something like that to my social media account. But it's not about that, right? It's about sharing. It's about reaching that people in a more personal level, and share things with them, and then share back with you. It's not okay just having, I don't know, uh, it's not about just numbers, having 3 million connections. It's about using the power of that network.
Yeah, and it's amazing how personal it can get. I get people reach out all the time and they share their stories with me, and they'll say, well, I tried this thing that you talked about and it worked. And that's amazing. Like, oh, they'll say, I tried this thing that you talked about and it didn't work for us, but here's what happened. And so we start to build this rapport and this conversation. And you're right, there is a tremendous opportunity right now to reach out to people. I think people, we might be burned out on Zoom, we might be burned out on having calls all day, but when you can make that authentic connection and you can build that connection with somebody in your network, everybody benefits from that, and that's truly valuable.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. And yes, Jeff, this was what I had to share with everyone in Agility Talks today. I believe that the A.L.M.A framework and Forever Employable really aligns in a way that they share the same agility values. As you say, Forever Employable is also about agility, and this is great. So just would like to thank you for being in the show. It was great sharing this experience with you and understanding how we could apply these values in our personal lives too.
My pleasure, Eduardo. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and I look forward to chatting with you some more in the future.
For sure, for sure. Thanks a lot. This was great.